Hello, and welcome to another Art and Home edition of the Teen Art Club. Before we jump into today's project, let's do a quick review of the projects we've done so far. In January, we did buttons. In February, we did 3D doodler pens and pull string art. In March and April, we did origami. Another edition in March and April, we did nail art and stamping. July, we did Impressionism and Claude Monet's footbridge. And then July, we did embossing. In honor of Native American Heritage Month, today we will be making Dreamcatchers. What is a Dreamcatcher? In some Native American and First Nation cultures, a Dreamcatcher is a handmade willow hoop on which is woven a net or web. The Dreamcatcher may also include sacred items such as certain feathers or beads. Traditionally, they are often hung over a cradle as protection. It originates in Ojibwe and Chippewa culture as the, quote, spiderweb charm, a hoop with woven string or sinew meant to replicate a spider's web used as a protective charm for infants. In a 2001 article in the Aboriginal Multimedia Society publication titled Where Did the Ojibwe Dreamcatcher Come From?, written by Terry Lusty, Bev Longboat, and Alice Noah were interviewed. The legend goes, there was a very special woman who was responsible for the children. Her name was Spider Woman, a name likely given as was customary in the Indian tradition. Her job was to web these dream catchers and hang them above a baby's cradle board while the infant was sleeping. As its popularity increased, however, it proved too much for Spider Woman to take on because she could not travel from one location to another and try to look after all the children. So at that time, she passed the webbing technique down to the aunties, grandmothers, and the mothers to look after the webbing for the children and the young. The dream catchers were made of willow. The little opening at the center of the web allowed the good dreams to pass through and filter down through the feathers hanging from the dream catcher and into the dreaming minds of the children. It was another stage of life that a child went through. In constructing the dream catcher, significance was placed on the number of points where the sinew was wrapped around the willow. In the original story, there were 8 points for her 8 legs. Still others used 7 points for the 7 grandfathers, or the 7 prophecies. Some used 5 for the 5 sky shapes. Some have used 13 as signifying the moons, and some have used 28 for the lunar months. As for the shape of the dream catcher, it was made in a circle, a representation of the sun that travels across the earth. However, it is not uncommon to find them in the shape of a teardrop. The traditional dream catcher was between 3.5 and 5 inches in diameter. Any larger, it loses its significance, its traditional value, or you could say the power of the dream catcher itself. Over time, things about the Dreamcatcher have changed. Things were added to it. In the article, Noah mentions the significance of the 3 beads that were woven into a Dreamcatcher. The 3 beads stand for our 3 fires, the Potawatomi, Ottawa, and Chippewa nations. So when I do crafts, I put 3 of them on my work. While the number of feathers attached to a Dreamcatcher may vary, some people only use 1 to symbolize knowledge or wisdom. In the article, Longboat says, it's entirely up to you on how many you add on. Just about everything you put on there has significance depending on the person doing the webbing. The article concludes, reminding the reader before picking any willows, one should make a tobacco or cloth offering to the spirit world. In the course of becoming popular outside the Ojibwe nation, various types of, quote, dream catchers, many of which bear little resemblance to traditional styles, and that incorporate materials that would not be traditionally used, are now made, exhibited, and sold by new age groups and individuals. Many Native Americans have come to see these, quote, dream catchers as over-commercialized, offensively misappropriated, and misused by non-natives. The meaning of feathers plays an important role in the belief system of Native American Indians. Their beliefs are based on animism, which embodies the spiritual idea that all natural things within the universe, including birds, have souls or spirits. Animists believe that souls or spirits exist not only in humans, but also in birds, their feathers, and in animals, plants, rocks, and natural phenomena. The doctrine of animism is that everything is alive and possesses an inherent virtue, power, and wisdom. Here's a chart of various birds and the meaning of their feathers. For instance, a feather from a bluebird symbolizes happiness and fulfillment, while a feather from an owl symbolizes wisdom, the ability to see things normally, a creature of the night, silent and swift. Gem lore is full of stories of gemstones with magic and symbolic properties. Ancient people believed that certain gems would protect them from misfortune, illness, and unhappiness. The list of gem-related superstitions is long and sometimes contradictory. Opal, for instance, was thought by some to bring bad luck, while others cherished it as a symbol of hope. For example, I looked up 3 different gem charts for the meaning of Amazonite, and I got 3 different meanings. Here are some gemstones and their meanings, and a few one might find in a Dreamcatcher. You can pause this slide to take a closer look. Here are some pictures of Dreamcatchers that look more traditional. And here are some pictures of Dreamcatchers that look more non-traditional. To make our Dreamcatcher, you will need one 4 to 5 inch hoop, although any size will do. I've even seen people on YouTube using a hula hoop. You will also need 1 skein of embroidery floss or string. I think 4.5 meters will be plenty, but I didn't factor in the extra string needed to attach the feathers. You will also need feathers and optional beads or precious stones. Here are the instructions on how to make a Dreamcatcher. This project was difficult to explain in writing, so I would suggest you skip ahead to the video and watch that first. Come back later and pause the screen so you can read the instructions at your leisure. Hello, Teen Art Club. In honor of November being Native American Heritage Month, we will be making a Dreamcatcher. I've never made a Dreamcatcher before, and this one took me 5 times to get it to look like this, so don't get discouraged if yours doesn't come out right the first time. The hoop I'm using was made with the 3D printer at the Eastlake Library, but you can use any hoop you can find. Often embroidery hoops are used when making Dreamcatchers. The hoop I'm using was designed with holes in order to string my thread through, but if you're using an embroidery hoop, you would simply tie off the thread at each of these marks. I'm not sure what I was doing wrong with my first 4 failed attempts, but I found by dividing the circle into 12 locations to tie my string gave me the pattern that I was looking for. The easiest way to divide the hoop into 12 locations is to think of it as a clock. First you would mark off 12 and 6, then 9 and 3, and then within each of those quadrants you would then mark off 1 and 2, 4 and 5, 7 and 8, and then 10 and 11. This should give you 12 locations on where to tie your string. On this circle with the holes, it ended up being about every 3 holes. In the video, I am currently tying a double knot at the top of the hoop. With our double knot secured, I will now be showing you the 12 locations where I'll be threading my string through. If you're using an embroidery hoop, you would simply tie off your string at each of these locations. I'll warn you, it seems like I spent most of my time untangling my thread. This seems to be inevitable in this first part of the process, but maybe you'll have better luck than I did. My best advice is to go slow and untangle your thread as you go along. Me untangling my string goes on for quite some time, so let's jump to the part where I'm ready to get started. You're going to thread your string through the number 11 mark. I'm sorry I keep going off camera. My filming assistant wasn't around to let me know when I was out of frame. I then very quickly get my string tangled up again. So let's fast forward to the part where I get it through and I'll show you what it looks like. This is what it should look like. You'll see that the thread goes through the top of the hoop. You're next going to take the end of your thread, make sure it comes up through the center of your hoop, and then put it once again through the top of number 10 this time. So moving on to the number 9 spot, you're going to do the same thing. Bring your thread up to the center and then push it through the hole for number 9. Or if this was an embroidery hoop, you would tie off your string to the number 9 marker. You're going to repeat this process for the rest of the hoop. So bring your thread up to the center of the hoop, put it into the next marker, pull the thread through, bring the thread up to the center of the hoop again, put it into the next marker, pull it through, and then repeat until you get to the top of the hoop. If your hoop doesn't have holes in it, such as an embroidery hoop, you would tie off the string at each of those markers. Here's one more look on how your hoop and string should look. Again, if you're using an embroidery hoop, instead of threading your string through holes, you would just tie off the string in each of those locations. So now that you have your string tied off or thread through the holes of those 12 locations, you're now going to take your string and put it through each of the loops that you've just made. It will make more sense as I go on. I initially had coiled the string around my fingers to make it easier to push through each of the loops, but at this point the loops are a little too tight to be pushing that large of amount of string through, so I had to unravel it. But later on I will coil it up again to make it easier to go through the hoops. Just like when we were threading the string through the holes, you want to make sure you go through the top of the loop and pull the string down. And then you're going to repeat by bringing this thread back up through the center of the hoop and then back down through the next loop. So up through the hoop and then down through the loop and then pull it through. You're going to continue this process all the way around until you get to the top. After 2 or 3 holes, when I pull the string tight, you can see the pattern beginning to form. Here again you can see the pattern when that first row is almost complete. When that first row is complete, you're then going to take your string and feed it down through the hole that you just made. This step reminds me a lot of the game Cat's Cradle. You're then going to repeat this process until you run out of string. You might have to pull on that first row to see where the hole is for you to put your string through. I sped up the video to show you the process for the next 2 loops. Now that my pattern has begun to form and the loops have loosened up, I decided to wrap the string around my fingers to make it easier to push it in and out of the loops. As you get closer to the center, you can pull on the end of your string to define the pattern and tighten the web. But be warned, by tightening the web, it might make it harder to get your string through the tiny, tightly pulled loops. If you want the center of your Dreamcatcher to be more in the middle, try pulling the string in different directions to try to get it more centralized. After wrapping the string around my finger again to make it neater, I continue threading my string through the loops. You're going to continue this process until the loops get so tiny or the web gets so tight that you can't fit your thread through the loops anymore. It will get to the point that no matter how much you pull on the string, the circle in the middle will not get any smaller. Obviously, don't pull on the string so hard that you snap it. When you're happy with how your Dreamcatcher looks, or when the loops get too small to fit your thread through, or the circle won't get any smaller, snip the rest of the thread off, leaving about an inch or 2. Thread the end of your string through one of the loops and tie a tight knot onto the web. Once your knot is secured, cut off the extra string at the center of the Dreamcatcher and at the top. Add beads or feathers to the bottom and a loop at the top to hang it, and your Dreamcatcher is complete.